So for a while now, we've been talking about digital transformation, and one of the key tenets in cultures in order to succeed and thrive during digital transformation is the ability to be adaptable. Unfortunately, in the circumstances we now find ourselves in with COVID-19, organizations are being forced to adapt more than they ever thought they would have to. And that idea of change is tough, and a lot of organizations are struggling with that. They're dealing with lots of people who have historically shown maybe a resistance to change within the organization. But I just wanted to share a story with you that I heard once that has always stuck with me around our innate ability as human beings to be adaptable. We're actually hardwired to be adaptable, and we must always remember this. We must never forget it. So the story is about a gentleman called Pedro Bach-Y-Rita, and he was a school teacher in New York, taught Spanish. And in 1985, he was walking to his school to teach, where he collapsed on the sidewalk with a stroke. It was pretty massive, and he was paralyzed because of the stroke. Part of his brain was fried. I don't know if that's the right language to use, but it basically, the neurons and the pathways had been destroyed, which meant that he wasn't able to walk or move. And the doctors said, that's the way you're going to be for the rest of your life. You can't change. Now, at the time, Bach-Y-Rita's sons were in medical college, and they didn't want to accept this diagnosis from these doctors. So they took their father back home and started to retrain his brain. And firstly, they would try and get him to crawl along the wall crawl along the floor like a child, leaning against the wall with his elbows to try and hold him up. Then eventually getting to the point where he was catching balls and getting those motor skills going. And within a year, Pedro Bach-Y-Rita was actually back at school teaching Spanish, where he stayed until he retired many years later. One of Bach-Y-Rita's sons, Paul, actually went on to lead the way with what we now know is neuroplasticity. And the idea behind neuroplasticity is that when parts of the brain, the neural pathways, the neurons in the brain aren't working anymore, the other parts of the brain can actually take over and start to do that job that those parts of the brains can no longer do. That is adaptable. That is, we have it built into our DNA to be able to do that. There was actually some amazing experiments done by Pedro Bach-Y-Rita's son, Paul. And one which has always sat with me is they would blindfold people and put cameras on top of their heads. And then they would throw balls, and they couldn't obviously see, but they would wire in the cameras to parts of their tongue and try and get the tongue to send the message to the brain where the ball was coming, so that they could catch it. So reprogramming the brain and different neural pathways in order to be able to interpret images that were coming towards them. It's fascinating. So in this time of where we are asking our teams to change in a way that we've never asked them to change before, and we may have felt there's been too much resistance, and we're sitting there with not a lot of hope that our teams are going to be able to do this, you'll be surprised. As human beings, we are wired to deal with this, and we're wired to be adaptable. And I encourage you to have that trust in your team to be able to do that.